These are some strange times we're living in, and so many people are struggling with questions about economic uncertainty, the death of loved ones. What does it look like going forward? Is the working situation ever going to be the same? One of the big questions I have is with our what we've seen with the environment, how it is coming back from even just this short time of our restricted activities. Are we going to learn from this, or is it just going to go back to normal? Same with our politics. Is once we get through this crisis, is everything just going to go back to the way it was, or are we going to learn something from this? But at another level, when we are confronted with these kinds of changes throughout our life, it forces us to change our view of the world. From our childhood, where it was more innocent and naive, it progresses towards something more mature. But as we do so, we are forced to revisit some ultimate questions about who am I? What is life for? Even, is there a God? Right now, we are all going through one of these changes. When we walk into a space that is clearly set apart specifically for spiritual activities, and that may mean that it's got candles, it may mean that it's got incense or artwork or special symbols or certain kinds of music or chant, we just can't help but have this sense of we've entered into a sacred space. But why is this? What is sacred? At a basic level, sacred simply means something that is set apart exclusively. We also can use the word holy for this. The opposites are words like common or profane or vulgar, which really are all just different words that mean common every day, as opposed to the special that's set apart. And so there's this idea that you don't bring the profane into the sacred. This is why many places of worship have, in a sense, kind of a dress code. You wear your best clothes when you go. Or some places you even do different types of things, like removing your shoes, or you don't come in if you haven't washed your hands and your face. Now, some of these may seem strange to us, but it's because we're not sharing the same view of the world, the way things are ordered. You see, sacred, the idea that there's a right place or a set apart space presupposes that there is some kind of order to the world. An example that I like to use for this is if we talk about potting soil. If I was to take it out here and just kind of spread it around the table, we would say that that is dirty. If I take that same potting soil and I actually put it in a pot, we don't call that dirty because it's in its proper place. This idea of clean and unclean has to do with this understanding that there's an order to the world and things are either in place or out of place. And so when we're thinking about the sacred, this is dealing with this question about order. How are things supposed to be arranged? Now, when this perceived order of the world changes, this can feel like a revolution because suddenly things are not in the right place and they probably don't make sense and it causes confusion. This is one of the reasons why change is so difficult when we're talking about some of these foundational issues about how do we think about the order of the world. And really the reason this becomes so challenging for so many people is that there's no real justification for it. A lot of times it's just simply tradition or things that maybe worked well in the past but don't have any bearing on the present. And these ways of being in the world, these ways of ordering become codified amongst a number of people. And when this happens, we call it a culture. A culture is really just a ton of little habits that we all do, the ways we think about things, the way that we order the world. So the problem with these is when they become challenged, it can unnerve us, because when we're talking about worldviews, when we're talking about the way life is structured, and people start asking questions about why is it that way, we get to a point where we can't answer. You can test this out with a friend. Take any topic you want to that has to do with morality or right or wrong, whatever, and ask somebody why it is wrong. And when they give you an answer, you ask them why that is the case, and just keep going. It's going to be annoying like a little kid. But what gets really frustrating is when you get to the end, there is no answer. And this is often where the idea of God comes into play, right? This is the justification for it being this way is because God revealed it as so. We may come up with rational ideas why we think things should be one way or the other, but those can always be challenged. And I think that one of the big questions we have to deal with today is whether or not we are going to be honest about the fact that it is somewhat arbitrary why we do things the way we do. I think that what's really happening with a lot of, especially young people today, when they're questioning the way our world works and they're asking these why questions, is if we don't have a solid reason for it, should we be doing it? Because any of these rules that we make about how we structure life so that we can actually live it together, that we can get along, that we have a common way of thinking about things, come with restrictions. There's things I can't do, and there's things I can do. And so if we're going to be telling people you can't do X, Y, and Z, we should have a good reason for it. You know, it makes a lot of sense when we say, okay, you're supposed to drive on the right side of the street and follow the traffic laws, because this is going to allow everybody to be speeding down the road at, very fast speeds and huge chunks of metal and not collide into each other. It makes sense. It gives us a way that we can see there's a common good here. But other things are not so clear. Why are our tax laws set up the way they are? Why do we think about money the way that we do? I mean, some of the core issues that are coming up now with this whole pandemic. Healthcare, of course, is one of the big ones. Lots of things are being questioned and challenged, and because there isn't a firm foundation where we can ultimately come to some objective reality that's just true for everybody in all times and places, it becomes frustrating, because then it becomes, well, who's making up the rules? While we're wrestling with this, at a societal level, at a political level, it's also affecting the faith level of what we believe. The traditions we hold are coming and have been under fire for some time. And there's a shift that's happening. Many young people now are in record numbers choosing not to affiliate with religion. And a lot of the reasons that they state are because we are engaging, well, they would perceive religion as creating division, whether it's between gender, sexual identity, even race, especially the whole question about science versus superstition. There's just a lot of rethinking that's going on. And so it feels like a revolution, because these ways of looking at ordering the world are being questioned. What is sacred? What is common or profane is becoming blurred. And so it's this sense of a sacred revolution that we're going through right now. And this is one of the things that I really want to dive into with this channel, is looking at, from my perspective, how I understand what's happening with this sacred revolution. And in the next episode, I want to talk about my personal journey from Christianity to spiritual naturalism. Hope to see you all then. Be well, everyone.